Normally like two behind them. Isn't that the most absurd thing? You're moving up. You're moving progressively towards the bima. You're making aliyah as a word in some form. Hey guys, hey Bonnie here. Nicole, can you hear me clearly back there? Oh, you're yes, okay, that's good.
I have an important question for you.
No, I think after several months of fidgeting around with things, I think I've finally gotten the sound inside the room to sound. Yeah, well, it's a much better, right, it's a much better situation. Believe it or not, I didn't even know that these existed, but there's like a little mini mic stand. And this is the one thing I want to take with us somehow or another back to the temple. Having this little extra space on the side, you would never believe how important that ends up being on so many levels. But so this way, at least it's not like a million things all protruding all over the place. And I think, thank God, I finally figured out our Saturday morning audio situation, which has been terrible. So I finally fixed that. I will have fixed it as of tomorrow. So, you know, forward progress and all that. And we should also compliment Ira's wonderful haircut. That is a very lovely haircut. You know? It's hard to appreciate hair with masks on, right? It distracts the whole thing, but it looks good. It looks really good. If I still had hair of any sort that required a haircut, I would find out where you guys got your cut. That's it. Every 2 years. I like to think about how much money actually my baldness has saved me over the years. You know, it's been a very helpful part, an unexpected helpful part. All right. Shabbat shalom. So, again, I knew you were a woman of your word, but how did dinner come out? Did you eat the dinner yet, or it's? Okay, good. I mean, good fish there. Very good fish there. Yeah, I don't think people realize that. Spumoni's actually has excellent fish. Excellent fish. But that's, you know, that would, as a quick aside before we start, when I was basically getting ready to become a rabbi here, one of the things about sort of where I should live. And I remember Neil saying very clearly to me, he said, you know, if you're going to be the rabbi in Sag Harbor, you really should live in Sag Harbor. So that when you go to the grocery store in Sag Harbor, you see your people, right? You go to the post office, you see your people. And he was totally right. He was totally right because, you know, again, going to Scavoni's in the middle of the day to get, you know, something for lunch, and you run into people, you know, and it's a lovely thing. It's a really lovely thing. I appreciate it, as I appreciate all of you and being with all of you. And Keelan over there, it's good to have you. As you'll notice, Cantor Lauren's off for a couple of weeks. We don't have her every week during the year, so we try to, you know, spread out as best as we can. So we'll go back into old school mode, which makes us happy. Also, we seem to remember most of our things. So Keelan, why don't you get us started just to warm us up a little bit? So we're going to turn now to page 120 as we begin Shabbat. Welcome Shabbat with lighted candles. Again, page 120.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
We'll turn now to page 130 as we begin Kabbalat Shabbat together at the very top of the page.
Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Naria, naria, letzori shenu, lekad mafana betoda. Naria, naria, letzori shenu. Bizmirot Mariado, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai.
We're on page 131, Shiru Ladonai in the middle of the page.
Shiru l'Adonai, Shiru Shir Chadash, Shiru l'Adonai, Kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai, Baruchu Shemo, Asru meyom leyom Yeshuato, Shiru l'Adonai, Baruchu Shemo, Asru meyom leyom Yeshuato, Shiru l'Adonai, Shiru Shir Chadash, L'Adonai Kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai Baruchu Shemo, Asru meyom leyom Yeshuato, Shiru l'Adonai Baruchu Shemo, Asru meyom leyom Yeshuato.
Turn now to page 132, or Zaru at the very bottom of the page. We turn now to page 134 at the very top of the page.
Aharim lifnei hamelech
Turn now to page 135, Romamu, the last paragraph in Hebrew in the middle of the page. We turn now to page 136. Mizmor leDavid, Avul Adonai b'nei elim, Avul Adonai kavod va'oz, Avul Adonai kevod shemo, Yishlach Avul Adonai behadrat kodesh, Kol Adonai hamayim, El hakavod hivim, Adonai hamayim rabim, Adonai hamayim rabim, Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shober harazim, Vaishaber Adonai et arzei halbanon, Vayarkidehem kemo egel, Lebanon veSiryon, kemo ben re'im, kemo ben re'im. Kol Adonai chotzev labotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yechol el hayalot, Vayechesof ye'arot ubechalot, kulo mekavot, kulo Adonai lamabu yashav, vayeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. We'll turn now for page to Chadodi, page 138, and Keelan, I think we're going to do the whole thing. Okay. Lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat lekabela, Lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat lekabela, Lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat lekabela, Lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat
נקבלה שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד השמיענו אל המיוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה כי היא מקור הברכה מראש מקדם ניסוחה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה ומצאי מתוך ההפכה רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה התנערי מעפר קומי לבשי בגדי תפארתך על יד בן ישי בית הלחמי קרבה אל נפשי גאה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה התעוררי כי באורך קומי אורי שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נקרא לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לא תבושי ולא תקמי מה תשתוכחי ומה תמי בך יחפשו עניי עמי ונמלטה הרעתי לה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה והיו לשמסו שעושייך ברחקו כל נבלייך יסיס עלייך אלוהי ימסוס חתן הכלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה ימין ושמאל עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצולתו אמונה עם סגולה אוי חלה אוי חלה לך דודי לקראת בני שבת לקבלם יאי לי 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 לה 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 לה
Please be seated. I have to remind myself not to start the clapping because someone once explained to me that there are two different beats that you can start on, and I'm the wrong one. That was basically the way I was explaining. Whatever it is, I'm the wrong one. So don't follow me when it comes to rhythm. That's a tough one. We'll turn to page 140 as we conclude Kabbalat Shabbat with Tzadik Katamar, which is right where the Hebrew indents in the middle of the page. Kaddish, page 144. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba ve'alma divrach yirutei ve'amlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'gala u'bizman kariv v'emeru Amen. Yesh me Rabba mevarach Le'ahalam li'al me'al maya yitbarach
V'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalam shemei dechutcha brichu leila min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata damihiran behalma v'yimeru. Amen.
We rise for the Baruch Hu on page 146.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Please be seated. We'll turn now to page 148. Let's read together in English at the bottom of the page. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, ruling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzvahot shemo, El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Amahari v'arahavim. We'll turn now to page 150. We'll read together in English at the bottom of the page. Everlasting love you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night will we reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Ki hem chayinu v'erech yameinu, v'hem nege yomam v'layla, v'avatcha tasir mimehenu li'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Please join me on page 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Let's read together on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot. And wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. As we turn to page 158, Mechamach. b'mai b'mimba. Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokeyam lifnei Moshe Miriam, zelianu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. V'nehemar, kifad Adonai et Yaakov, ugolo miad chazak mimenu, baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Ashkivenu, page 160. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'amidenu shomereinu lechaim. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'amidenu shomereinu lechaim. Lechaim u'shalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'hamidenu shomereinu lechaim. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Yerushalayim. Turn to page 162, Vishamra. Veshameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם בריתותם. Shabbat, Shabbat Vayinafa. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit. We'll begin the Amidah together on page 164, and then we'll continue silently. As always, please go at your own pace, and when you're finished, you may be seated. Again, page 164. Adonai sefatai tikachu pi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Oseh shalom mimromav, Uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. We'll turn now to page 371. Before we sing our Mishaberach prayer, we'll think of those first in our community who we know who are in need of healing. Glenn Tinney, Tzipora Ahava, Gittel Bat Shmuel Va'aviva, Gerald Hirsch, Oren Nachum, Bruce Steger, Chana Ruth Batsara, Jeff Baker, David Tasher, Jim Cohn, Monique Renee Banks Rathbun, Lindsay Epstein, Dolores Michka, Sylvia Orn, Yerachmiel Ben Hinda, Paloma Chauhan, Samuel Moskowitz, Chaim Live, Joyce Weinberg, Rick Gold, Stu Pollack, Jane London, Catherine Guarino, Emunah Chava, Judy Stern, Miriam Cornfield, Raz Brody, Chanarut Batsara, Svekel Tzipora Bat Elisheva, Elisheva Batsara, Richard Gambino, Michelle Sawicki, Idol Basha Bat Yitzchak, Tvi Menachem and Chaim, Rivka Bat Devora, Amy and Gavin Tucker, Janice Kurz, David Dowling, Israel Ben Yitzchak, Ben Sion Ben Moshe, Lorraine Danis, Buddy Kossoff, Shelley Newmark, David Kyle Klopman, Rivka Bat Rachel, Sarah Bat Chana, Moshe Eliezer Ben Sivia, Peretz Ben Yehuda, and Leah Bat Naomi, Gedalia Ben Leah, Justin Banner, Tzipora Ava Bat Yehudit Rachel, Jane Beard Cass, Amy Cass, Steve Levine, and Ira Madras. So in addition to the names we just mentioned, for those that are in the room with us tonight, if you have additional names to share, we'll start on this side of the room and work to the back, and then this side of the room and towards the back. So if you do have names to share. Okay. Of course, we'll invite those watching at home to add your names as well. We'll join together now on page 371 as we sing our Mishaberach together in the middle of the page. Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So this week in the Torah, we're reading from Parshat Vayera, which is known for what? What's the main part of that parsha that we are familiar with? Any guesses? There's no Chumash in front of you to cheat, so it's you won't find it in the hymnal, that is for certain. Okay, it does involve Abraham, that's very good. And what? Very good. Okay, so Vayera is the parsha that contains the binding of Isaac the Akedah, which we read famously on what holiday? Second day of Rosh Hashanah. Very good, though. Very good. You got to come to second day of Rosh Hashanah. It's where it's really at. But what happens is, a lot of times, as with the case of many parshas in the Torah, where there are sort of seminal events, big events, things that we find to draw our attention, we pay almost exclusive attention to those sections and we miss others. But there's another very, very important thing that happens in this week's Parsha, and it teaches one of the fundamental ideas or concepts within, let's say, sort of Jewish practice as much as Jewish law or Jewish custom. And it begins really at the beginning of the Parsha, in the famous story of Abraham and Sarah welcoming in these three mysterious visitors who appear, and this sets off a whole chain of events, including the, telling Sarah that she's going to have a child in her old age, all of these kinds of things. But the story that's described is what the rabbis later attribute to a concept called hachnasat orchim, a concept that becomes really a mitzvah, a commanded expectation of our people. That we are meant to, lachnis is to welcome in, right? To, likanes means to come into a room, basically, so to welcome in. Orchim are visitors, guests, and by extension, really considered not necessarily like your Shabbos guests who you know are coming, right? But the people that you precisely don't expect. And that's really what happens at the beginning of the Parsha, is Abraham is really just sitting, at the opening of his Petach Ohel Moed, right? Petach Ohel Shalom, right? At the opening of his tent. And I know years ago I described an experience that I had when I was in the Sinai Desert of all places, and we were with a friend of ours who happens to be the foremost expert of the Bedouin in the entire world, and he drove us out 3 hours into the middle of the Sinai Desert in a Jeep bouncing along, nothing to see for miles, and then all of a sudden, out of the distance, there was a woman sitting at the little bit of her tent, sitting there just waiting, and sure enough, we drove over, and she made us a meal of delicious, what really is what matzah should be, cooked on a sort of a black cast iron skillet turned over on the other side. And it was the most amazing thing. And then we kind of moved on. But there, of course, was the example of why hachnasat orchim is such an important concept, is that it's not, as I said, in a built-up world. It's the image is what it's like to, for example, live in a nomadic situation where you may be traveling a great distance. You may not be anywhere near you where you know people. And so being able to trust that a stranger is going to welcome you into their home, feed you, clothe you, take care of you, is sort of, it's not something that can be left up to chance. It has to become part of the identity of a people who live in a society, in a world in which there is that kind of transience, right? That sense of movement from place to place. And it becomes such a big idea, believe it or not, that it's not just a nice thing to do. As I said, it takes on the power really of a mitzvah, of a commanded obligation. And we learn even further in the Talmud of Masechet Shabbat, there's a discussion amongst the rabbis, and it begins with Rabbi Yochanan, who says, Hachnasat orchim, welcoming guests, is as great as rising early to go to the house of study, right? Which is, by the way, something that we're all expected to do also, is to get up as early as we can and to go to the place of study that we go to and to learn. But in this case, we're learning Hachnasat orchim is more important even than that. So now we up the elements here. Sorry, in that case, Rabbi Yochanan is saying it's as great. It's on a plane with the same thing. Okay, then Rav Dimi of Nachardia says that it's even more so, right? That it's even greater than. And then we get even more so, Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav. Rav is the general term for Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who is considered to have been the codifier, the editor of the Mishnah. So about as important a figure as you can imagine. So Rabbi Yehuda was one of his students saying in his teacher's name that in fact welcoming guests is not just as good or better than showing up early for study. It's even more important than receiving the presence of the Shekhinah, of God. Okay, so Hachnasat orchim, according to Rav, according to Yehuda Hanasi, right, the codifier of the Mishnah, is saying that Hachnasat orchim is even more important than welcoming the presence of God. And this idea gets taken even further. Rab Asi, who speaks in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that there are 6 things of which a person eats the fruit in this world, but the principle remains for the world to come. In other words, things that we do in this lifetime that are, we don't really see the fruits of our labors, to borrow the phrase, until the next life, right? And what it basically is telling us is that these are 6 things that are so fundamentally important they can shift our entire experience even in the afterlife, right? That they are the thing that tips the scales in the greatest balance that matters, right? Of those things, they are, and the first thing on the list, Hachnasat orchim, welcoming guests. In addition to visiting the sick, being focused in prayer, rising early to go to the house of study, raising children to study Torah, judging one's companion favorably. But here you have in its totality, right, Hachnasat orchim again is the number one thing on the list. Now I know all of you, and I'm getting to know some of you better as time goes by, but you're all wonderful, welcoming people. You've probably all in some form or the other invited us over, and that's wonderful, but that's not really what Hachnasat orchim is really focused on. It's really something a little bit broader than that, as I said. Now, I want to add one other element to it. This comes from another section of the Talmud called Chagiga. If anybody, just out of guessing, any idea what that section of the Talmud might be about if I said it slowly? Chagiga, festivals, holidays. Very good. Okay, Chagiga. It's about sacrifices related to the festivals, but we'll leave that to the side for the moment. So Rabbi Yochanan teaches in this case, and Reish Lakish, who was another of his contemporaries, and they both said, at the time that the temple stood, that temple and what happened to the temple atoned for the people, right? The main purpose of the sacrifices in many ways in the temple was to atone for us collectively. Okay, but now they say, since the temple no longer stands, it is a person's table that atones for him or her. In other words, right, who you invite into your home, who you welcome, who you share bread with, who you connect with in that kind of way, right? That's fundamentally, principally that important. So much so that even if we do wrong, the way that we welcome in people into our homes and share our food and share our hearth, right, that these things are enough to even overcome and to atone for the misdeeds that we may have. So now I'm going to shift completely in a different direction and yet at the same time related. And this was a total shock to me. I didn't even know that it existed. I don't know whether any of you will have heard of it. Any of you ever heard of what's called the Parable Against Persecution? Written by Benjamin Franklin, right? None of us. Okay, total shock to me. And this is verified. It was actually written in his own hand, November of 1760. So it is basically a reimagining of the beginning of this week's Parsha. So I want to read it to you. It's not terribly long, but it has something really quite remarkable to say. And you can kind of picture Ben Franklin in your mind as he's writing this. And from what I gather, just as a quick aside, apparently he was something of a prankster. He liked kind of putting one over on people. So he wrote this out, he memorized it, and then when he would go traveling, in particular to England as he was doing diplomatic work, he would read this, sort of standing in front of a Bible, but read this version. And he was basically on the assumption that most of the people in the pews didn't know the actual story well enough. So they all believed that this was the story that in fact took place. So enough of the preamble, I'll read it. And it's written in classic sort of King James Bible English. And it came to pass after these things, so far we're keeping very much with the Hebrew, that Abraham sat in the door of his tent about the going down of the sun. And behold, a man, bowed by age, came from the way of the wilderness, leaning on a staff. And Abraham arose and met him and said unto him, Turn in, I pray thee, and wash thy feet, and tarry all night, and thou shalt arise early on the morrow and go on thy way. But the man said, Nay, for I will abide under this tree. And Abraham pressed him greatly. So he turned, and they went into the tent, and Abraham baked unleavened bread, and they did in fact eat. And when Abraham saw that the man blessed not God, he said unto him, Wherefore dost thou not worship the Most High God, creator of heaven and earth? And the man answered and said, I do not worship the God thou speakest of, neither do I call upon his name, for I have made to myself a God, which abideth always in mine house, and provideth me with all things. And Abraham's zeal was kindled against the man, and he arose and fell upon him, and drove him forth with blows into the wilderness. And at midnight God called unto Abraham, saying, Abraham, where is the stranger? And Abraham answered and said, Adonai, Lord, he would not worship thee, neither would he call upon thy name. Therefore I have driven him out from before my face into the wilderness, thinking he'd done the right thing. And God said, Have I borne with him these 180 years, and nourished him and clothed him, notwithstanding his rebellion against me? And couldst not thou, that art thyself a sinner, bear with him one night? And Abraham said, Let not the anger of the Lord wax hot against his servants. Lo, I have sinned. Lo, I have sinned. Forgive me, I pray thee. And Abraham arose and went forth into the wilderness, and sought diligently for the man, and found him, and returned with him to the tent. And when he had entreated him kindly, he sent him away on the morrow with gifts. And God spoke again unto Abraham, saying, For this thy sin shall thy seed be afflicted 400 years in a strange land. But for thy repentance will I deliver them, and they shall come forth with power and with gladness of heart and with much substance. And this was the end. So here, right, we take the story and we flip it really on its head. And of course, Franklin, who was writing this in 1760, right, is writing this before right, even the country is established. Okay, and he's envisioning, right, what is the foundational sort of identity of this country going to be about? Is it going to be one that welcomes people as they are, or is it going to be only those that follow along with a particular prescribed expectation? Right? Hachnasat orchim as a principal concept is not about welcoming only in the people that you know, or the people that you like, or the people that you agree with, right? Or people who are from your own country or your own land, or that look like you or speak like you. Right? Hachnasat orchim is about taking the risk that you may in fact be inviting a stranger of which you know nothing into your home at some amount of loss to you, right? Remember, again, living in the desert, you are not living with plenty, right? Whatever the Torah may describe, Abraham is living in a tent. Okay, he doesn't have a million things, but he has something. And he and Sarah ultimately provide for the strangers in the story in the Torah everything that they possibly have. And in this changing of the narrative, right, he's not talking about Abraham and Sarah anymore, he's talking about us, right? He's talking about a vision of a country, he's talking about a vision of a people that can embrace the underlying concept of what Hachnasat orchim is about. And to understand, again, principally, that it really is much more than just about feeding people and making them feel at home. It's about accepting, it's about welcoming, it's about allowing people to be themselves and then to be a part of. Now, obviously, Franklin was an idealist. Okay, Abraham, Sarah, idealists. Your rabbi occasionally can be accused of the same thing. Okay, it's not always so easy. I don't think any of us are necessarily going to swing open the doors to our home and let anybody walk in at any given time. But at the same time, I think we can push ourselves a little bit further, not necessarily about our own homes, but about how we conceive again of our communities, how we conceive of our temple, even how we conceive of our country, how we conceive of really what, again, we want to be. What do we aspire to? And what is the source of that aspiration? And so I think this is a great opportunity for us this week as we study this Torah portion to consider this question for ourselves and to ponder it and to imagine it in a similar kind of way to the way that Franklin did, right? Is to sort of get to the essence of what is this story really about? What am I meant to learn? How am I meant to follow this particular mitzvah? Because I will tell us that we are all good at it, but we're not good enough. We have work to do in that regard. Again, individually, collectively, as a community, and I think especially as a country. It would probably do us all well to go back, and even if Franklin's intention with all of this was somewhat satirical and somewhat tongue-in-cheek, I think actually it's really quite deep. And it's really quite remarkable, again, that he's writing this before the country even exists. This is really an image in a mind. But what he is trying to convey, again, is that America was not meant to be founded as a country to mimic England with a different name and a different title. It was meant to create something that didn't yet really exist in the world, which was a place that truly would be welcoming to all to come and to build a place that would be meaningful. So as I said, we have much to celebrate in that fashion, and we have much to challenge ourselves in that fashion as well. And why not start with Abraham and Sarah, who teach us so many lessons in so many ways. So with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and go look this up. Apparently he wrote another parable of some sort that ended up somewhere, but, you know, quite a character, Benjamin Franklin, that is for sure. So we're going to rise now as we turn to page 586 at the very bottom of the page, Aleinu L'Shabech. those in mourning and those observing yahrzeit to please remain standing. Everyone else may be seated at this time. We begin by thinking of those who have passed in our community in recent months. Sylvia Alderman, Morris Dickstein, Fred Eber, Sandra Furman, Evelyn Gelb, Arthur Grossman, Elaine Grossman, Jeanette Kopp, William Lipman, Audrey Lubo, Morty Lynn, Jerry Monroe, Harry Olstein, Danielle Lisa Rigg, Geraldine Rosen, Harriet Roth, Jeannie Rubin, Howard Schreier, Dorothy Shupnick, Paul Silver, Marlise Silverberg, Blanche Sklar, Rita Sandra Snyder, Joan Strong Tangzilius, Virginia Tizer, and Ann Weiss. We also mark the yahrzeits that occurred during the last week for Gail Abel, Sura Appel, Robert Benjamin, Abe Bennett, Louis Berkowitz, Samuel Blake, Alain de Rothschild, David Doctorow, Beatrice Dror, Richard Agosi, Morris Eisner, Aileen Fagan, Teresa Gilbert, Irving Gostin, Meyer Hinderstein, Claire Klausner, Shelley Levine, Stuart Newmark, Monique Pezkowski, Stephen Popkin, Samuel Rodney, Abraham Saltzman, Morton Schoenbach, Judy Sheldon, Barry Tabachnik, Harry Warter, and Rose Weiss. Does anyone with us this evening have any names that we didn't mention that you'd like to mention? And certainly we'll invite those watching at home to add the names of your loved ones as well. We'll join, we'll rise in body or spirit as we, the mourners join together on page 598, Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach irutei ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agalah u'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam le'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu. Le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav u'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. Please be seated, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. A few quick announcements before we conclude our service. The first is that services will begin tomorrow at 9:30. Again, you can join us in person in the chapel, or you can watch live stream on our website, YouTube, or Facebook channels as well. Archived versions are available shortly after the service ends, and Torah study will begin on Zoom at 12 o'clock. This Sunday, a reminder, at 7 o'clock, we have a Zoom book talk with Bina Bernard on her most recent book, Keeping Secrets. Roger Rosenblatt praised the book with his review, saying, Bina Bernard has written a beautifully paced, heartfelt, and powerful novel of destruction and repair, the eternal story of survival. The event, again, is free for everyone. Just please do sign up so that you can get the Zoom link. Again, that'll be this Sunday at 7 o'clock. Coming up this week, Nene Mitzvah will meet at 11:30 on Monday. Hebrew School is at 3:30, and the Social Justice Committee will have its virtual meeting on Zoom at 5 o'clock. My class on Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel's book, The Prophets, is on Wednesdays at 12 o'clock. Later that afternoon, Hebrew School will meet at 3:30. My class on A Journey to the Heart of the Siddur is Fridays now at 9:15. And again, for both of my classes, even if you can't make it at the time, if you're interested, you can sign up and you can get there's a video recording of it each week, each class, as long as I remember to do it. And hard to imagine as it may be, as we are looking at the month of November, we'll be getting the November calendar. Hanukkah this year is fairly early, so it actually begins before the end of November. And so it will be another year where we can't quite do the big blowout parties that we normally would do, but we're going to make the most of our time at the wharf this year, and we're working with the village to try to close off a little bit more of that space so that we can really not feel like we're being rushed kind of out of the area. But you know, on the off chance that Natagosi is watching, he's like our go-to guy every year. His family is the reason why we have that menorah in town, the Chanukiah, I should say. And it's really, you know, especially this year, it's a really important thing to come out and Pirsum Hanes, right? Publicizing the miracle. And, you know, it's one of those things I feel like every year we've done it and we've been able to do it, the number of people who show up grows and grows and grows. And it's really a beautiful moment. And last year was very tough, like all on my own in the freezing, like going around town trying to light, you know, candles in various places. It got me through, but I'm really looking forward to this year. That's basically a long way of saying I'm really looking forward to this year, and I hope you'll be able to join us, and we'll make sure to try to do as much stuff online and in person as we possibly can. We have a few other things going on. We have 2 virtual tours of Jewish museums in Paris. We have a program on Georgia O'Keeffe. We have apple picking in a local orchard. We have opportunities for social justice work. So all that is to say, please keep an eye out for when the November calendar comes along. Any other announcements? Did I miss anything? Anybody? See, Keelan's always ready to go. Isn't that like an amazing thing? You know, unfortunately in my household, my daughter has been reminding me basically since last year's Hanukkah ended, when Hanukkah is coming again. So, yeah, that's going to be fun. Okay, so we're going to conclude our service. You know, I'm forgetting, Keelan, what did we used to do to end services? Does anybody remember? Did I just pick something? I know this is a strange thing for our newer members, but, you know, when Keelan and I were doing this for years, and it's been a bit different the last year and a half, so some things we remember very clearly and others... Well, pick something. Okay, well, why don't we do Shalom Aleichem? We don't really do that very often. Keelan, I'm going to do this one a cappella, though, because I think it's going to throw me if I hear it with the... But you are welcome to join with me. We're on page 627. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon. Mihi melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vo'achem leshalom malachei hashalom malachei elyon. Mihi melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni leshalom malachei hashalom malachei elyon. Mihi melech malachei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem leshalom malachei hashalom malachei elyon. Mihi melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And before I forget, also, it's going to be Deborah. Where's Deborah? Where'd she go? Deborah's birthday this week, so we can also wish Deborah a happy birthday on our way out. Big deal. Big deal. Okay, we're going to rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 123 for Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam b'horei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzav b'hanu v'shabbat kodsho b'hava uvratzon inchilanu zikaron lemahaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh Zecher litziat Mitzrayim, Ivanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, Nikol hamim, ve'shabat kodshecha, ve'ahava uvratzon inchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your Shabbos and your week. Thank you for coming, and happy birthday, Deborah. I hope it's a fun one. Okay? You are absolutely in the same plane, okay? Okay, 100%. That's great. Okay, good Shabbos, everybody. Good Shabbos, Keelan.
Dan?
Yes, sir.
Can I have 1 minute?
Yeah. Sure. I'll tell you what. Just hit the thing there. Let me just turn off the system. Good Shabbos to our friends watching.
And it's someone's wedding anniversary.
Whose wedding anniversary? It's not mine, is it?
No.
Good. That would have been a very uncomfortable conversation. Just
last let your heart decide.